All right, so it is my pleasure to introduce you to our next speaker today. We have Dmitry Jemerov. I really hope I said your surname correctly there. Morning, Dmitry. How are you?
Morning, I'm great. I'm
Good.
actually on vacation in Turkey right now, so I'll be presenting from my hotel room in Turkey.
We appreciate that level of dedication.
Yes.
Okay. So by way of introduction, Dimitri is a product manager here at JetBrains for IntelliJ IDEA. He has worn many hats since he joined the company back in 2003. He's going to be talking to us today about developer productivity in IntelliJ IDEA and mixing that with his product vision as well. So please do continue to add your questions to the chat. The moderators are on it. And if there are any questions left at the end, I'll be putting them to Dimitri as well. Fun fact about him, other than he's in his hotel room in Turkey, is this is very relevant. He loves to look at maps, including where he's been, where he's going to go, and sometimes random places. So just before I hand over, I now have to ask, is this random or is this a place that you always really wanted to go?
You mean Turkey?
Yeah.
Or what? Well, actually, going to Turkey was like one of the few available opportunities for me to meet my family because, like, they're in Russia and I'm in Germany, and I can't go to Russia and they can't go to Germany. So we
Right.
had to find some place there where we could actually see each other, and like there were not that many options due to various lockdowns and travel restrictions.
I'm glad you made it.
Yeah,
right.
It's quite awesome here.
Good. Well, like I say, we appreciate the dedication. So let me add your screen and you are good to present. Good luck. Thank you.
Okay, so yeah, as I said, like as Helen said, my name is Dimitri, and today I'm going to talk a little bit about developer productivity and our product vision. So I've been with JetBrains quite a while, so you can see that I'm actually one of the top contributors to the IntelliJ code base. And in the past 2 years, my primary responsibility has been product management, even though I'm still quite active technically as well. And with product management, the main challenge that we see right now is how do we actually evolve a 20-year-old product where one of the most common feedback that we hear from users is that it already has too many features. How do we figure out what to add, what to change, so that the product gets even more useful for our users? And one of the ways we approach that is we actually try to reflect on the process of development, try to analyze what exactly happens in the mind of our users as they are working with our product. And development includes many different things. You have to deal with writing code, debugging code, deploying code, testing code, and so on and so forth. In this talk, our primary focus is going to be on writing and testing and to some degree debugging, and all the other activities are not something that we are not going to touch. And the reflection that we are doing with, like, as part of our product work, we hope that it will also, like with this presentation, I'm trying to help you reflect on your own work using some of the same principles that we use to reflect on the development process in general. And please tell us what you think. So there is a lot of subjective stuff in this talk, a lot of stuff that is our worldview, which is not universally correct. So please talk to us. Please leave comments to this talk. Please contact us on Twitter and share what you think about developer productivity, what happens in your brain as you're writing code. So first of all, why is this a challenge? This is a challenge because programming is hard. And not only it's just hard by itself, we actually want it to be hard. So if we, as developers, encounter something which is repetitive, which is easy to do because it doesn't challenge us enough, we try to find ways to automate it, to condense the repetitive, easy work into something harder but more challenging and less time consuming, so that we can actually keep ourselves challenged. And this means that while working on code, we are focusing on the problem we are solving. And we don't have all that much mental capacity for other stuff. Like we don't always have the possibility to think about whether we are using our editor or our IE in the most effective way. We don't always reflect on whether we are doing something in the most time-efficient way possible, or if there are some shortcuts that we could have applied, but we didn't think of them because we are too much focused on the task. And the process of development is also not always the best time to learn about stuff that can help us get the things done faster using some features of the tools or the libraries of the language that we are using. And while programming is hard, on the other hand, we want to challenge us, but we also want to succeed. We want to be productive. And what does it mean to be productive as a developer? So first of all, we need to do the right thing. So it doesn't make sense if we write lots of code that is completely irrelevant to the problem that we actually need to solve. We want to do this quickly, and we want to do this with an appropriate level of quality. And the level of quality differs very much between the situation where you are writing code for the rover that is going to land on Mars, or when you are trying out Android development, you are writing a game that you maybe will play yourself and maybe share with a couple of friends. And the ideas don't help all that much with understanding what you need to do, but they do help a lot with letting you get your job quickly and with an appropriate level of quality. So what exactly happens as you're programming? So the ideal situation is when you know what exactly needs to be done, and you just go ahead and write the code. Write the tests, do the TDD process if you like that, or just write the code and test the code after the fact. And you're just rolling, you're in the state of flow, you churn out many, many, many lines, and this is kind of the ideal state. But it's by far not the only state that you are in when you are writing code. So first of all, before getting into that state, you usually need to figure out how to accomplish something, where to put the code into the system, how to organize the code, what APIs to use in order to reach a goal, how to integrate those APIs with the rest of the code base, and so on and so forth. And in that, on that stage of the process, you are fairly often stuck. You just don't know how to proceed. You may need to do research, look up things online, to talk to colleagues, or find other ways to get unstuck. And then often after you write some code, it does not do what you expect. You have to debug it. You have to understand why it crashed, why it did not produce the result you expected, why the UI looks wrong, or why the service is not returning the right kind of response, and so on. And once you are done, once the tests are green, you generally need to clean up and maintain and polish the code so that it meets the quality standards of your team, or the quality standards that you have set for yourself in your own project. And the IDE provides different levels of help in each stage of that process. So when you know what to write, this is kind of the most obvious way that an IDE helps you. So for example, it helps you with auto-completion. So you can type like 100 characters per minute, and with the auto-completion pop-up, it inserts some more characters for you. And so in the end result, in the end, you can get 200 characters per minute into your source file. Code generation features also help you with the boilerplate code that you need to generate. You just invoke an action in the IDE, and it generates a bunch of code that does not carry any deep meaning, but is required to maintain the structure of your program. Intention actions also help quite a lot with like localized changes to the source code. Like in this screenshot, you see some of the suggestions that IntelliJ can give you that help you with getting the correct code out written. And this is all nice, but in that state, you don't spend all that much time. Usually, you do need to do quite a bit more research and understanding, figuring out what to do. As for figuring out how to do something, the IDE can actually provide quite a lot of help in this area. So first of all, there are many features that allow you to build the mental model of the project. You can easily see the structure of your code. using diagrams and hierarchy views and other navigation features. You can easily jump through code and see how different places interact with each other and how the project is put together. You can use find usages to see what's the purpose of certain places in your code, where they are used from. You can use CRI documentation to access the documentation of the project itself and the libraries that you are using. And with those features, you can build quite a bit more deep level of understanding compared to simply reading through code like file by file and trying to understand what's happening there. Very often you need to build something that is similar to something that has already been built in this project. And in this case, find usages provides a great way to find places where something has already been done, and you can just follow the same approach, or maybe even copy some of the code so that you can use that as a template for solving your new problem. Very often you need to understand how exactly the code works that does something similar to what you need to write. In this case, the debugger is invaluable. So you can step through the code, sees the state of the system in the process of execution of the code, and see how it interacts with other parts of the system. And the debugger just is a super powerful tool for visualizing this kind of thing. And in some cases, you just need to ask a colleague. So, and with even with that, the IDE can help. So the version control features can help you understand who is the colleague that you need to ask. And Code with Me allows you to set up a remote collaboration session so you can work together with a colleague on figuring out how to do something and get help direct and in real time. When something didn't work, the IDE can also help you get unstuck in various ways. In many cases, you don't even have to do anything. So for example, if the code you have written will not compile because you did not use the language syntax properly, or you did not pass the correct arguments to a function or something like that, you will see this in real time. So you will not need to go through the process of compiling your code and getting the list of errors and then jumping from the errors to the editor to understand what happened. You just see immediately what has gone wrong. And in many cases, the IDE can also offer quick fixes so that you can correct the problem. Also, in some cases, you can get a real-time preview of what you are writing. So this mostly happens when you are working on some kind of UI, and IntelliJ does not have all that many features for what you see is what you get UI development. But for example, Android Studio has a great visual designer that allows you to see your layout as you're writing there without doing the full rebuild and launch cycle for your application. And there are also many features that allow you to get assistance on request. The debugger is, of course, the main one. And one recent addition, I think Tagir may have mentioned it in his talk, is this very nice feature like find cause for exceptions. So when your program crashes with a null pointer exception or with a class cast exception, you don't have to manually hunt for the source of this problem. You can use the IDE assistance. So you get this nice pop-up, find out why, and IDE gets you to the location where you forgot to initialize a variable or where you put something of the wrong type into the field. And with cleanup and maintenance, there are lots and lots of things that the IDE can do for you. So if you've established some kind of standards within your team or just by yourself, you can set up them in the IDE. And once you do that, you won't have to spend any time formatting the code, ensuring that it has the right white spaces and indentation and blank lines and everything. You can set up an inspection profile that tells the IDE which kinds of problems need to be identified, and you can run inspections also in real time in the editor, or you can run them before commit, and you can make sure that you are not committing any yellow code to the version control, and this ensures that the quality of the code is maintained. Code coverage allows you to ensure that the proper level of testing has been reached, that you have enough tests covering your code. And if you see that something is not up to the standard, there are also many features that help you fix your code. Quick fixes, as I already mentioned, and refactorings can allow you to restructure your code so that it can be reused later and has a clean structure that is easy to follow and easy to understand. And if you look at the features that I've been talking about, they are essentially divided in two big groups. So there are proactive features and something that I'm calling user-driven features. So proactive features are something that just the IDE does for you without you requesting it. For example, syntax highlighting. You don't need to press a key to see like the string letters in one color and numbers in another color. IntelliJ does the same thing for error highlighting. So you immediately see errors and warnings in the editor. You don't have to request them to be produced. You just see them immediately. Some typing assistance features belong to the same group, to the same category, like auto-indent, placing the character at the correct place once after you press enter, or inserting pair braces. This also happens automatically. Code completion generally happens automatically. So you see the completion pop up, you just need to select the parent manually, but you don't have to think about needing to invoke completion. It just pops up for you. Some of the editor decorations also belong to the same group. So IntelliJ shows icons to the left side of the editor, which we are calling gutter icons. Like, for example, this screenshot shows an icon that indicates that a method is implementing an interface. And there are also inlays. There are extra chunks of text or other decorations that we show inside the code. In this particular example, there is an inlay that shows that the name of the parameter to which you are passing this is called panel. And such inlays make it much easier to understand complex method calls when you don't remember the signature by heart, and especially when there are multiple parameters of the same type, you can easily see what goes where and what is the meaning of each individual parameter. And also one of our favorite examples of these kind of features are extra tricks that we do on paste. For example, if you take some Java code and paste it into a Kotlin file, the IDE automatically offers to convert it. And judging by the feedback we hear from our users, this is one of the most beloved features of our users. When someone sees it, it's very often, they tweet about it very often. They tell how cool is that. And so we are very happy to see that this makes our users delighted. And user-driven features is basically everything else. So all the shortcuts that like Hadi was talking about during his previous session, and lots and lots of other features are something that you have to invoke by yourself. You have to know that the feature exists. You have to understand that it's appropriate to use that feature in the particular moment of time, and you have to know how to invoke it. And there is lots and lots of this stuff. And one other way to look at different features of the IDE is some of them are kind of linear, and some of them non. Some of them make you faster by a constant, so to say, linear, and some of them give you a more boost than that. So, for example, code completion is a linear speed up feature. You, as I said, you can type 100 characters manually, and with code completion, you can type 200 characters. This is nice, but this is just a linear improvement. And using the keyboard shortcuts instead of mouse is also the same kind of linear improvement. So yes, Key Promoter is a great plugin, and it's a great way to learn about IDE features, but not knowing the keyboard shortcut of a feature should not prevent you from using it, because if you know that the feature exists and the feature can give you a lot of benefit, then it's better to invoke it using the mouse than just to do the same thing manually without using the feature at all. And nonlinear features speed you up exponentially or give you new capabilities that you don't have at all if you don't use the feature. For example, project-wide find replace is probably the most quintessential example of this feature. So instead of making 100 similar edits to different parts of the project, you can do one batch operation for find and replace. You can say that please replace all occurrences of this string with this other string. And no matter whether there are 3 occurrences or 3,000 occurrences, the operation takes roughly the same amount of time. So this is a nonlinear speedup. Structural search and replace is an even more powerful way to do that, which is specific to IntelliJ IDEA. So you can write very complex patterns of code and also provide complex replacement patterns explaining what the code should be replaced with. And teaching how to use structural search properly would probably take another 45-minute talk. So I'm just like giving you a brief tease of what this is. If you haven't used it before, you should look into it. It's a super powerful feature. And refactorings, of course, are the same kind of nonlinear boost. So rename or extract method or introduce field, they can produce, they can update many occurrences at the same time as a single operation without you needing to perform this or repeat this operation manually. And I would claim that the debugger gives you the same kind of exponential speed up. So if you don't know what is happening during the execution of the system, you can add tracing, you can add logs, you can guess what's happening, you can try to read the code and reason about it. But the level of visibility that you get just by stepping through the code once is often so much more than just having to do this manually without using the debugger. So if you're not keen on using the debugger, please give it a try. And I think this can give you lots and lots of various benefits. The profiler also is also one of the features of this type. So the level of insight into the performance of your system, it's simply not available if with any other means other than using a proper profiler. And the recent versions of IntelliJ Ultimate integrate a great profiling tool that can take care of both CPU and memory profiling, and this is a great productivity benefit. So just as a quick recap, so the IDE helps you in different ways at different stages of the process of running the code. When you are writing code, when you are figuring out what to write, when you are figuring out why things don't work, and when you are cleaning up the code to make sure that it meets the quality standards of your team. Some of the features in the IDE are proactive and are available without you doing anything, and some other features require you to learn them and activate them explicitly to benefit from them. And some features give you a linear, and some features give you a non-linear boost to productivity. So the next thing I'm going to talk about is how people choose and learn an IDE. And the kind of the problematic situation in that space is that IDEs are deceptively easy if you compare them to other professional tools like, I don't know, Photoshop or Maya or Ableton Live. With an IDE, you can essentially make do if you just see the list of files on the left-hand side, an editor where you can type on the right-hand side, and there is all sorts of confusing buttons and other elements around those two parts, and you don't know what they do, you don't know what they are for, but you can actually just get by without learning why those things are here and what they do. And in this way, you can learn, you can use the IDE, and you can use the IDE for years and years without learning what makes this IDE good or different from other IDEs, because you see your files, you see the text, you type the text, you have some way to run it and make sure that it works, and that's it. And basically, you don't absolutely have to learn anything else. And this is great because the barrier of entry is low. You can start being somehow productive within minutes of starting a new IDE. But the downside is there's no direct incentive to get better at using that tool. And there's when the tools can do so much more for you, it's kind of unfortunate that, like many people say at this level, of just using them as text editors and not much more than that. And choosing an IDE is actually a very hard problem. So every modern IDE has hundreds of features. They are all different, and there are different approaches to many problems, and some of the approaches make more sense in one context, and some approaches make more sense in a different context. But when people talk about IDEs, which IDEs they use and why they use the IDE, they don't give that kind of context. they don't give that kind of explanation of the differences between the IDEs. They just say that, yeah, okay, this IDE is great, everyone is using it, so I'm just going to go and use it as well. And also a strange phenomenon is that people kind of assume that every feature of every IDE can be replicated in any other IDE. So like VS Code with plugins has all the features of IntelliJ, or vice versa. And this is not actually true. There are things which are unique to a given IDE that are there are things which cannot be replicated due to how the tool is built, how it's architected. And this is true for any tool. So there are features in Eclipse that cannot be replicated in IntelliJ and so on. But a lot of this is not part of the discussion when people talk about how to choose an IDE. And in the end, we find out that for many people, the look and feel factors play a major role in the decision. And we, once upon a time, IntelliJ itself benefited from it quite a lot when we were the first IDE to introduce a good-looking dark theme. And many people chose IntelliJ for that primary reason, that we had a dark theme that they liked. And also kind of a surprising thing is that learning IDEs is not really encouraged. So there's one tool that people actually encourage other people to learn and take pride in learning this tool properly, and this tool is Vim. And Vim is a great tool. So I had some occasions where I worked together with someone who was great at Vim, and it's just amazing how fast they are able to do things, because it's hard to follow how they do it, but you see that they do some magic and they can get results fairly quickly. But ultimately, Vim is a tool for manipulating text. So its commands work in terms of characters and lines and not statements or declarations. And yes, you can integrate Vim with plugins that provide code completion and navigation and so on and so forth, but those kind of sit kind of separately from the powers of Vim itself. And I would actually very much love to see a tool that integrates both concepts, so the command-driven approach of Vim and the level of knowledge of code that IntelliJ offers. But I'm not aware of any efforts to build such a tool, and maybe we'll get to doing it ourselves, but maybe someday. And novices are actually encouraged to learn to do everything from the terminal. And this is not wrong. So doing things from the terminal actually does give you a somewhat deeper level of understanding of what actually happens under the hood. But many people just stop at that. So yeah, they learn how to use the terminal and they stay there. Whereas doing things from the IDE can often be more effective and more visual, and you can you can see more information, you can see more connections between the various parts of information. You can interact with data more simply, and it's worth learning how to do things in the IDE and why this is different and why this is better from the terminal. And people are just not encouraged to do that. And also, for learning IDEs, there are not that many resources available. So if you look at the amount of books and courses and videos and everything available for learning how to use Photoshop, and compare that with IntelliJ or Eclipse or VS Code, there is just, I think there is an order of magnitude difference. There is just so much more stuff available for those other tools. And this obviously has to do with demand. So people are not that interested in spending multiple hours learning how to do this IDE. And since you are here, since you are watching this talk at this conference, you are obviously already in a better position than many other developers, because you are curious about tools. And this is a great thing, because as we've seen, all the ways that IDE can help you, they actually give you a nonlinear boost to how effective you can be as a developer. So you can build a deeper understanding of the code base you're working in. You don't get stuck figuring out why something does not work, because you can actually understand what's happening and understand how what's happening differs from what needs to happen. And so you can find a way, you can more easily find a way to make the right thing happen. You can be better at being a team player and automatically apply accepted standards. There are few things that irritate me more than seeing one senior developer telling another senior developer during a code review that they forgot to put a space in the right place in the code. And with the tools being used properly, this does not happen, because tools take care of itself automatically. And IDE assistance can also be a great tool to learn more about your language and frameworks. For example, with Kotlin, we have been putting a lot of emphasis in that, in giving you IDE assistance that teaches you about proper ways and effective ways to use the language. And we are trying to do the same thing for frameworks that IntelliJ supports, and so on and so forth. Of course, Java, for Java, we do that as well. So we've talked for some time about how this looks, how the development process looks from the point of the developer. And now we are going to take the other side and see how we use these insights to drive the development of the IDE from the product side, and what are some of the decisions and features that we have implemented based on this kind of thinking. So first of all, proactive assistance. So I've talked a bit about these kind of features like error highlighting and gutter icons and inlays. And for that, our biggest challenge is finding the right amount of assistance to provide. Because if you provide too much stuff, if you show too much on the screen, this creates cognitive load. So you are getting distracted from the code you are working on, from the problem you are trying to solve, because there is just so much stuff on the screen, especially if it's shifting, especially it's interfering with your typing, it can get very frustrating. So we have to be very careful with adding more features that show extra stuff on your screen. But if you don't show enough, there is just like it's a wasted opportunity. So those things help a lot, and they can help you figure out a problem faster. They can help you move around the code faster, and so on and so forth. So we do want to show some level of assistance for users. And the right amount depends very heavily on context and depends very heavily on user preference. So some people can only work in tools like Sublime Text or TextMate that don't have any kind of assistance of this type. And some people love powerful IDEs such as IntelliJ. And the context also matters a lot. And ideally, we want to automatically understand what the right level of context is and automatically adjust the level of proactive assistance that we provide to the context. But unfortunately, it's in the general case, it's an unsolved problem. So one of the recent examples of this type is the reader mode feature that we introduced in one of the recent versions of IntelliJ. So in this case, we have a very specific context. We have the context of library code. And we know for a fact that you are not going to edit this code. And we know, as a consequence, we know that you are not going to fix errors in this code. So if something is done not ideally in a library, you are not going to go and fix it. It's the job of the library author, not you. And so we remove the assist. We don't show any warnings in library code because this is not helpful. And we do activate a different kind of assistance. We show render doc comments. So when you are working with library code, you very often want to understand what a library function does or how to use this properly. And for this, documentation comments offer a lot of assistance. And so we are making them easier to read by automatically showing them in a rendered way. So instead of showing like raw HTML or Java doc markup, we show a nice, easy to read block of text. Another example of this kind is the related problems inlay. I think Hari mentioned it in his talk. So when you are performing refactorings manually, it's very often that you introduce problems outside of the current file. So if you add some parameters to a function, or if you change the return type of a function, or if you rename something, you make changes that require other changes in other files. And of course, you can build your project and see where those places are and go there and update them manually. But in recent version of IntelliJ, you don't have to do this manually because we detect such problems in real time and we show them directly in the file where you've directly next to the change where you introduce the problem. So in this case, I've changed the return type of an interface method, and the implementation of this method is no longer compliant. Is no longer conforms to the definition. So I see in the interface, I see a pop an inlay that lets me navigate to the implementation and see that this is a place that I need to change. What do we? I've talked about proactive features, but most of the features are in the other categories, like user-driven features. So what do we do about them? So here, the keyword that we have been repeating many times in our discussions during the last years is discoverability. So we want features to be discoverable. So for any feature that we add to the product, we want to have a clear path how every user can find out about the existence of this feature and can understand what this feature does and can understand how it applies to their workflow. And of course, this is a high bar. So in many cases, we just say that, yeah, we can see how this feature makes sense, but we don't see how we can make it discoverable. So we may postpone adding some features because we just don't have the discoverability story figured out. And as the opposite side of discoverability, we also try to reduce clutter by de-emphasizing rarely used features. So, for example, we did several rounds of toolbar cleanup so that rarely used toolbar buttons are moved to context menus, and some features are even removed from the product entirely into plugins that are not bundled. So if you rely on the functionality, you can still install the plugin and use it, but most people don't, so they don't see their UI being cluttered by the features that are irrelevant for them. And the IDE feature trainer is one great example of that, and I think Hadi also talked about it. So this is an interactive onboarding experience promoted on the welcome screen. So it's a very easy and very quick way to get introduced to the key features that you have to learn to use in order to be productive in the IDE. So for new users, this is a great path to learn the essentials, learn the 5 features that can open the doors to everything else that the IDE does, and with just a small time investment, new users can get much more productive when using the IDE. And as a more concrete example for making something more visible, we have heard a lot of feedback that people don't know about the features for navigating between problems in the file. So the previous and next problems shortcuts, F2 and Shift F2 in the default key map. So our evangelists kept telling us that they tell users about those features and users are delighted to learn that they exist and they start using them. But there is no direct path to finding out that they exist unless you read through all the help or through all the menu items, which is not something that many people do. So we've added always visible on-screen controls for navigating between errors and warnings in the current file. And so they also let you know about the keyboard shortcuts that you can use, but they also give you a direct path to navigate between warnings and errors. So what else do we care about as a product team? So the next thing is reducing friction. And friction is essentially the word that we use to indicate wasted time and annoyances. So the worst thing that an IDE can do is make you wait for it. So this is basically a negative benefit to your productivity. When you cannot do what you intended to do, you have to sit and wait for the IDE to do something. And this is, of course, very annoying, and we are putting a lot of effort into minimizing the amount of such waits that you have to experience when working with IntelliJ. We are also working on improving stability so that you don't need to spend time figuring out how to fix the IDE, why it doesn't do what you expect it to do, why it broke, and what can you do to make it work again. And if there are any problems in the IDE configuration, in your project configuration, anywhere else, we are always striving to provide clear diagnostics and steps for resolving problems. So you don't need to waste time trying to understand what the IDE wants from you. You just accept the suggestion or follow the guidance, and you get productivity. And one example of this is shared indexes. This is also something that Hadi mentioned. So this is infrastructure that lets you reduce the time spent waiting for indexing, which is probably one of the biggest annoyances with IntelliJ's current experience. So we ourselves build the indexes for the JDK and common libraries, and we store them in the CDN, and the IDE can download them automatically. And we also provide infrastructure for indexing your own project so that you can build your indexes on the continuous integration server. You can do this once for the entire team. You can share them with the team, and so every individual user does not need to wait for indexing. They can just use the pre-built indexes from the CI. And finally, what the last thing that the product team worries about is something that we call allure, or creating a positive emotional experience. So this is this look and feel thing that I already mentioned. So we are investing into various changes to make sure that our UI looks modern, that it fits nicely with the evolution of the operating systems, like the new versions of Windows and new versions of macOS. And we also provide a large variety of good-looking UI themes. And one specific example of a big investment that we made in this area is JetBrains Mono. So we hired a font designer to build a great-looking monospaced font, specifically for us and for using our IDEs, and we made it the default in all of our tools. And we believe that it's one of the ways of creating a positive emotional attachment to our products. So as a recap, as a product team, we are working on managing the cognitive load so that we don't overload the users with too much information. We are working on ensuring the discoverability of key features so that people can find out from working with the product directly that the features exist that can help them make them more productive. We are also de-emphasizing less useful and less commonly used features. We try to reduce friction, wasted time and annoyances so that you don't get annoyed waiting for the IDE to do something or figuring out how to fix it when it broke. And we're improving allure, so making sure that the UI is nice, modern, clean, and good looking, and creates a positive emotional response in our users. So what are the takeaways for you as a user of the IDE? So my main call to action for you is, regardless of what tool you are using, regardless of what kinds of problems you are solving specifically, reflect on your work process. Be mindful of how you spend time during programming. Be mindful of what you do, how different things that you do make you feel, when you feel great about your work, when you feel annoyed, or when you feel frustrated, or when you feel slowed down by the tools that you are using. Look for situations when something is tedious or annoying or difficult. And learn the tool that you are using. Once again, no matter which tool is that, whether it's IntelliJ or whether it's other tools that you use as part of your flow, learn them. And when learning them, pay special attention to things that you figured out while reflecting on your work process. Specific areas where you felt annoyed or frustrating, try to find ways to resolve them. And especially pay attention to features that give you a non-linear boost in productivity. And look for options and plugins that adapt the tool to your needs, to your work process, to your specific requirements. And also look at alternative and complementary tools. Look at other tools. Maybe they work better for your problems. Maybe they can solve some of the tasks that you are working on better. And when learning tools, try to go beyond coarse labels, like just knowing that this tool is heavyweight and the other tool is configurable and so on. Just go in depth, trying to understand how they work, why they work the way they do, and what makes them great. And use the right tool for each job. It's actually probably the most important thing. And once again, let us know what you think. We have some time for questions right now. Feel free to leave comments on the YouTube video, get in touch with us on Twitter. We will be really interested in talking more about all of this. And thank you for your attention. So this is my Twitter handle, so I'd be happy to hear from you.
That's great. Thanks, Dimitri. That was really informative. I learned a lot from that. Thank you. We had quite a few questions, and the moderators have been, again, brilliant and responded to, I think, all of them, but there are a couple. There was quite a lot of I won't call them upvotes, but let's say love for things like related problems, data analysis, inspections, a lot of the things that you said, this is, how we're doing this is why we're doing this. I personally really liked how you split developer productivity up right at the start into doing the right thing. Got my notes over here, doing it quickly and doing it with the right level of quality. I've never taken a step back and thought about it like that. So that was enlightening to hear it being spoken about in that way. I thought it was interesting as well how you explained about the numerous touch points in the IDE, and I guess it's a constant balancing act for you as a product manager between cognitive load and making something more visible and more obvious so that developers find it and use it, and it helps them. Is that fair to say?
Yes, exactly. This is like probably the biggest trade-off that we see as a product team, because we can make every feature discoverable by adding a big pop-up telling that, hey, this is this wonderful feature that we built, please use it. And we very quickly this starts getting in the way of your work, and you just abandon the IDE because you can no longer get anything done. You just have to click on the pop-ups all the time.
Yeah. And I guess, so you mentioned find error, F2, shift F2. Did that, so I'm a relatively new user to IntelliJ myself. Did that not, you didn't used to have the icon there? Is that correct?
Yep.
So before then it was just a kind of hidden, you put the icon in so people actually could see it. It was more visual. I understand. The other thing that I wanted to shout as well, you mentioned the Learn IDE features trainer. So I've been looking at that in the last couple of weeks as well, and it is really cool. Like it's bite-sized. I know that sounds cliche from a learning perspective, but it is. It's a really low barrier to entry. It remembers how far you've got. You can restart any lessons. It takes you through learning different pieces of the IDE at a very nice rate, well, whatever speed you want to go at. So I would say if you haven't already checked that out, do. It's very cool. Okay, before I go on to those questions, let me just have a look at the chat. Okay, obviously there's a bit of a lag. So how, in your view, can a user get the most out of IntelliJ IDEA to really boost their productivity, especially if they're new or they're just getting started? But in fact, let me split that question into two. Let me make it two questions. So the question is, how can a user get the most out of IntelliJ IDEA to boost their productivity if they're a new user to the product or if they're an existing user to the product? So I don't know which way around you want to answer those.
So for new users, I think actually the features trainer is one of the best starting points. So it's already good as it is now, and we're also trying to make it even better. So we are actively working on improving it in various ways. And I think this gives you the essentials. And IntelliJ is a powerful tool with lots of features, and you don't have to learn everything at once. Don't try to understand all that it can do just in one sitting. Just learn little by little. And if you're an existing user, I would actually call out to our wonderful development evangelism team, developer advocacy team, because we are making a lot of videos that cover specific aspects of the product functionality, like refactorings and version control integration and framework support and so on. And just watch one of those videos a week or one a month and just try to learn what it teaches you. And I think this is probably one of the best ways to
is there
to learn.
Would you say the same answer for kind of existing users? So let's say they have got the features trainer, they have a look, and most of the stuff they've already kind of seen or come across. Is there a different route that you might suggest for a more experienced user of the product?
I think the videos that we publish, they go beyond the basics, and like especially talks at this conference, they are fairly in-depth looks at different aspects of the product. So this is like one great way to learn about. And also one other thing that I can recommend, like as a power user, you might want to look into the Code Golf plugin. This is something that someone from our team has built, and this is a way. It basically gives you challenges how to accomplish a certain transformation of the code with the least amount of keyboard shortcuts possible. And this is just wonderful to learn about more advanced features and try in an atmosphere of a challenge, so to say.
That's good to know. That's good to know. So, I mean, you mentioned developer advocacy team.
Yeah.
What can we do, in your view, to help users get or learn the tool and get the most out of it? So I'm just going to potentially throw myself under the bus with this question.
Okay. So, in my personal view, something that something that helps a lot is content that is targeted to a specific problem that the user might experience. So, not just talking about like IDE feature factoring, but talking about how do we build a, like for example, like Trisha had a great series about how do we build a JavaFX application with IntelliJ, or I think recently there were something like that. And when you're in the context of a specific task that is similar to the task that you experience as part of your day job or as part of your learning process, this is a great way to learn about the features in the context, not just in like abstract things that the tool can do.
Cool, good to know. Thank you. Hopefully you're making notes on that one, Trisha. I can see you in the background. I guess another question is, why does it matter that developers are productive?
I mean, so well, I kind of have the view that people want to be good at their jobs, that they enjoy being good at their jobs, and also for personal projects, like if you are learning or if you are doing something as a hobby that you actually want to, when you have limited time to work on your hobby, you actually want to get great results. You want to build something that you are proud of, and this all ends up like developer productivity is like part of the path to achieving that, so that you can actually can get more done with the time that you have and with the resources that you have.
Yeah, there's it's something Hadi mentioned in his talk, actually. I want to say it's called the Productivity Guide. Hopefully it is called the Productivity Guide, that you can access from within IntelliJ IDEA. Is that perhaps one metric that developers can use, or do you think that's not necessarily a good measure?
To be honest, this was good when we built it. And unfortunately, the thing is that we haven't been really good at adding new features. We recently added features to the productivity guide. So it reflects the state of the idea as it was like some amount of time ago. But as for modern features, it does not have everything that we have added. And this is unfortunate. I really hope that we find the time to work on it soon, so that it actually has, like, the list of features that it offers is more in line with what the IDE can do for you today.
Understood. I guess related to that as well, it's how you balance getting the new features out there and getting them into the hands of our users, so that they have them, they can be more productive with them, and then doing some of that back end plumbing for the kind of related pieces it's always a juggling act in product, isn't it?
Yeah, and also it's very important. Like something that we always think about is that features have to advertise themselves within the product, because we have a lot of channels to teach users about features. We have the Twitter and YouTube and the blog and the website and everything. But in the end, like the number of subscribers of our Twitter feed is like less than 1/10 of the number of users of the product, and so on. And so every channel that we have reaches somebody of the audience, but the only thing that reaches all the audience is the product. So we kind of want the product to sell itself, so that users can understand what value they're getting from it.
Yeah. I guess talking about the product, what's the best way of wording this? What do you think is more challenging? Modifying the IDE, so putting in a product change, or finding a way to make finding a way to help our developers be aware that there is a feature there. So, for example, the F2 and Shift F2 example, I guess, I mean, I know it looks simple, there's just one little icon there, but I imagine there was quite a lot of thought and effort that went into considering where to put that icon, what that icon should look like, when it should be displayed. So it's not just, we'll put an icon there and it's great, it works, but is it, I guess, what's more difficult, making a change in the IDE or finding a way to make people available that functionality exists, even if it's not kind of flashing on the IDE or a button somewhere?
So there are lots of features that are very easy to add. And for example, if you look at feature requests that users send us in UTrack, they often tell us, why don't you do this? This is just so easy. But yes, often it is. But if you just add like a 14th way to move your caret, that is available if you like in the menu, and there's no way to learn about it. There's no way to see how it's different from the 13 other ways to move the caret. Then maybe it's not that much value. So we have to, we always think about the discoverability and understandability of whenever we add a feature. And often, designing, it's very often the designing a proper UX takes much more time than just writing the code for a feature. Especially yeah, go ahead.
No, you were talking about designing a new feature. Has there ever been a time when? Does it happen quite a lot that we'll put something into the IDE? So we'll put a button in, we'll put a dialogue in, we'll surface a feature and make it more visible, and then we dog food it, we test it internally, and it really doesn't work at all, and it goes through several iterations.
Yes, this happens once in a while. So, for example, we're one of the biggest examples was the new UI for commit in the version control integration. It took us, I think, the final release when it went out by default was like the 3rd or 4th release since the first one when it was available under a flag. So we do iterate, and we do look at the statistics, and sometimes we have to revisit things if we see that the feedback and the data that we are getting does not confirm that the feature is bringing enough value.
Yeah, it's I guess it's always better to iterate on something internally and get it right before we release it. So
yeah, so we have EAPs, and we do show unfinished work in EAPs, and that's one way that we are getting feedback. And it happens it's quite a normal situation that the feature is available in EAP, and then we turn it off in the release and then do more work on it and enable it in the next release.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, we have a couple of minutes left. I'm seeing any other questions over there before I give you some nice easy questions. So actually, I do have one more not so easy question. How much should a developer understand about what's being fixed? And fixed isn't quite the right word by the IDE. So how much is it okay to rely on, things like Alt-Enter? So the IDE helping you out and saying, maybe you want to consider this.
I think it's very important to understand why the IDE suggests what it does. And I think in most cases, we don't really give the suggestions that Alt-Enter gives you are generally not that complicated. And one thing that I would really love to invest some time into is creating a separate explanation page for every quick fix that we offer, so that we actually talk about why it's a good thing, why it's a useful change, or in what context is this a useful change, because in some cases we offer quick fixes that are appropriate in some situations, but not in all of them. And ReSharper used to have something like that. With IntelliJ, we never invested the effort into building that, but I hope that we will get to it someday.
Brilliant. Okay, I will give you an easy question to finish off before I hand over. What is your favorite thing in IntelliJ IDEA that makes you more productive? Or maybe I can give you 2 things, but fine.
There's no single feature. There's just so much stuff I cannot really identify. I'll probably say Alt-Enter. That's an easy way out.
Alt-Enter, brilliant.
Yeah.
All right. Well, look, thanks for your time, Dmitry. Thank you for joining us from your hotel room. Really do appreciate it. And I think, I know our viewers got a lot of value from that. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, and thanks for all the questions.